All right. So, hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another live conversation here at the Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. I am your host, Nick Werker. Today, we're focusing on legal technology, and our legal expert for this segment should be a familiar face to at least most of you. He is the founder of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. Also, Gideon, you should check both of those things out. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but he's a contributor and columnist for Attorney at Work. He hosts podcasts on the Legal Talk Network. He's the host of Above the Law's non-event podcasts. This guy's literally everywhere. And we're really glad that he's also simultaneously here today. Jared, Correia, welcome to
thank you.
Summer Camp.
The multiverse has made it all possible.
Yeah.
There's another instance of me that's recording a podcast right now.
Yeah. Listen, that stuff gets way too complicated for me very quickly. And also
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I was telling my kids when I was younger, I never got to go to camp. I always wanted to go to camp. Now here we are. I'm at camp.
You never went to camp?
Never went to camp. Yes, tragic.
I don't know how much my mother really loved me because of the amount of time that I spent at summer camps, going all the way until I was. It's funny how that goes, right? Like you might be jealous of summer camp, and I'm jealous that you didn't have to go to summer camp, right?
Have to. That sounds so strong. I was just released onto the streets to play until the street lights came.
Probably the compensatory part of it was not compulsory, right? I don't know. What's the word?
Yeah, the compulsory part is the killer.
Yeah,
I understand.
So obviously the whole point of this is that we're rebooting law firms, right? It's the second half of 2022.
Yes.
So we're in the second half, right? We're 11 days in, 12 days in.
I know, it's crazy.
But can you tell us about the legal tech trends that have really stood out to you for most of this year, and where do you sort of think we're going into the second half?
Like it's been a really interesting year for legal tech. And I would say that the biggest trend for me has been all these crazy acquisitions that have been going on. Like as an attorney who is buying legal tech or thinking about buying legal tech, I mean, your head's got to be on a swivel. And there was just a massive unification when LawPay with their parent company Affinipay bought MyCase, the case management provider. Like that's maybe the biggest, most significant legal tech transaction like ever. And I remember I was talking to somebody like 3 days before that happened. And I was like, okay, like you could use this case management software in reference to MyCase, but I don't know, they could be acquired like 3 days from now as an offhand joke. And like it actually happened. So it's interesting because all these legal tech companies are trying to consolidate technology to build what is effectively like an operating system for legal, in the sense of like, okay, this is all you need to run your practice. And I just don't see it, honestly. Like, I think that's the goal they have, but like, I find that attorneys are more likely to pick and choose the software they want. And the real big thing that you need is integrations between different tools, whether it's a, virtual receptionist service, VoIP software, billing program, time entry program. Like attorneys are very picky about what they want to use. And I think when you start to try to force feed them, like this is the all-in-one solution, that's going to be problematic. So that's something I'm watching for the second half of the year. I got a few other ones for you. Just tell me when to stop. Another thing I've noticed, which is really cool, is that law firms who used to call me and they were like, I'm super unorganized and I can't figure out why it is. Those law firms are now like, hey, I need processes and workflows to manage my practice better, which is like music to my ears, because we can skip that whole thing where I'm like, hey, you need systems to run your business more effectively. Like people have figured that out, which is great. And it makes it much easier on me as a consultant and also as somebody who sells software to say, hey, you understand the value processes. Now let's talk about how we lay those out. And then, as I mentioned, two more pieces that I think are useful. One is that, so I have this idea that like, which I've kind of workshopped myself, continuing to workshop it, is that like from 2008, 2009 onward, everybody was building like back office technology for law firms. So Clio came out, MyCase came out, Rocket Matter came out. It was like, shit, sorry, I'll stop swearing. if you want me to. That just came out, I swear. So it's like, wow, these case management softwares, like people want to buy them. So let's create 400 of those. And everybody ignored like front office law firm technology. So that was kind of like the first wave of cloud tech adoption for lawyers, as far as I'm concerned. And that ran from like 2008, 2009 until about 2018. And all of a sudden, like people started saying, oh, well, there's different types of products we could develop. Like we could actually have a CRM in legal, and we can use front office technology. So what I'm viewing now, I think, is kind of like, in addition to these acquisitions that are happening, there's a lot of people building these front office technology tools for law firms, and they're getting pretty sophisticated. And I think now that a lot of law firms have adopted law practice management software, a significant number, the next thing they're going to do is start adopting front office technology. And I think that's the next phase that's coming. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I started a front office tech company for lawyers, because I think that's going to be the next thing that's going to take off. And related to that, what I think is really cool is that like law firms pre-pandemic, law firms were doing only analog pathways to onboard clients. So you come to my office, give me a check. We have an in-person meeting. We physically shake hands. I give you a pen. You sign a contract, that kind of thing. Nope. I mean, the pandemic meant that like nobody really wanted to touch your pen because they didn't want to get sick. But like as a business owner who hires lawyers from time to time, as well as being a lawyer myself, like I don't care about touching your pen. I just don't want to go to your office. I don't want to take 5 hours out of my day to pay for parking, sit in your building, cut you a check. Like, let's do everything online. And what I think is cool is that law firms really went ahead and adopted a lot of digital pathways for intake. And now they have a position where they can do both. They've got an analog pathway, they've got a digital pathway. People can switch between those two. I think that's really cool. So I know I threw like a bunch of stuff at you, and I'm happy to talk about any of that or take anybody's questions on any of that. But those are some of the things I've noticed that I've seen happen and that I'm watching as like continued trends for the second half of 2022.
That was a lot.
I know. I'm sorry.
Cut that down. Sorry for. Come on.
This is the legal tech dump. Are you ready?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this too when we spoke at the Legal Tech Non event. You were like, like we're just gonna. I don't know. This is happening. We're going to talk about some stuff. We'll talk about some non-stuff. I do want to say I made a call, like a bet. I want to say it was like 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, Clio's going to $1 billion. They're going to $1 billion value.
Oh, you call that? Nice.
They hit it. Oh, yeah. But I incorrectly said that Salesforce was going to come out with a law practice management or like a legal CRM by like 2 years ago. And they didn't.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that they haven't, honestly.
And I only think that because I think that there's such an opportunity and a need on the part of law firms to really hone in like their sales process and have a place for potential clients, all of those things that we talk about. And I'm in the business of sales, so I see it all the time. And I talk like one of the craziest developments that I ever watched happen was we dealt with a lot of traffic ticket attorney and firms. And the first people who got the whole send me a picture of the ticket like 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
And then you don't have to come to my office at all. I'll send you a thing. You write back. You don't even have to show up to court. Those guys blew up. And that was without tech, right? They just figured out that send me a picture of the ticket. You don't even have to come.
At the lowest level possible.
You don't have to seriously fax it to me, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, that's a good point you bring up. So one thing I'll say quickly is on the Salesforce side, what's interesting is that you got a case management software out there right now, Litify, if you've heard of them. They've actually built their case management product inside of Salesforce. Now, that's not Salesforce developing a law practice management software, but there does exist a law practice management software inside of Salesforce. I guess the challenge with that is it's like a lot of people who are also trying to build on like Microsoft Dynamics, which is like, okay, you need to build this out for your practice. There's a cost there, but then you also need to buy like 2 subscriptions essentially. Either you're buying directly from Salesforce or Microsoft, or they're packaging that as part of the deal. And that becomes potentially prohibitively expensive as opposed to like a proprietary software. But I'd be really interested, like Salesforce, Microsoft, some company like that just said, the hell with it. We're going to build a law practice management software to see how we can compete in this market. It would be really interesting. I would just like to see it from a curiosity perspective.
Exactly. I'm talking about like an out of the box, like soup to nuts, not I have to buy this and then buy the overlay. And then because that's how you shop in Salesforce.
Yeah, but, exactly.
So
but the other thing you brought up, which is cool quickly, is like the convenience economy idea. Like those law firms that figured that out. And I think a lot of people thought like, okay, COVID is here. I can buy beer online. I'm now spending $700 a month on Grubhub. Like people thought that just came out of the blue, but it didn't. Like that stuff was going on before. It just accelerated it. Like all these companies existed pre-pandemic and they were doing well. Like they just exploded. And I think as lawyers were late to the party on that, because lawyers are always like, I'm going to put my systems in place. And then the clients are going to have to go through my protocols to get to me. And it just doesn't work that way. Like you have to make it simple and convenient, as simple as convenient as possible for your clients, potential clients, for them to even want to have anything to do with you. And lawyers are starting to do that now, but it took a while. So I think that point is well taken from you. The convenience economy is like the thing now. It was always going to be the thing. And now it's like entrenched.
I want to talk about that. So how do we use technology in order to sort of remove that barrier, right? Like I have my process, you must funnel through my I don't know, my chutes and ladders to get to my office, like sort of like the Mario, you got to get all the way through to save the princess, right? How do
I was hoping we do a Super Mario thing here today.
Yeah, right. I got my outfit.
Nice.
I got the mustache. I do.
You do. Yeah, you're halfway there.
Yeah, that is 50% of the Mario. So how do lawyers use technology in order to cater their service to their customers, right? How do you give the power back to the customer by using legal tech?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question. And it's like, I think lawyers are stubborn in the sense that they're like, hey, we're going to do like this one thing. So you want to contact me? Well, fill out my intake form at my website. And that's all you can do. And an intake form is like the worst possible thing you can do for clients, in the sense that like, if someone's not savvy, they fill out an intake form. What happens? Like nothing. That's a black hole as far as people are concerned. There's got to be things around that prompt them to understand that like something else is going to happen. Like there has to be some level of engagement. If it's an intake form, like shoot an email that says, hey, we've received your form. Like we'll be happy to talk with you. Any questions, email us here. And that underlies the point I would make here, is that it's options. So like this applies to like almost everything you do in legal practice, whether it's intake, whether it is marketing and messaging. Like from a marketing standpoint, you don't know if your potential client, a specific potential client, is going to be on Twitter versus Facebook. So post to both. You don't know whether somebody's going to want to do a chat to get through the intake process, or whether they're going to want to do contact form, whether they want to call you. So you got to have all those options available to you. It's not like a one-track system, which is what lawyers have always tried to do. It's a multi-track system, and you have to assume that your different clients are going to reach you in different ways. Now, lawyers don't want to set that up because they're super cheap, but it's not that costly. And every client you gain, there's going to be a value proposition there, in the sense that you're going to be making more money off of that client than you will to pay for technology services. Like technology services are way cheaper than people. So you don't have to hire somebody. You just get people options to come in and see you. So I think like diversity of options is really the key as far as that's concerned.
I think you're definitely right. And that I do want to say, Anne Michelle, you're 100% virtual. That is awesome. I love to hear that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Like, I love
still a very rare thing in legal, by the way.
Yeah, 100% is definitely, and listen, I'm not even 100% virtual. Like I'm here physically. This is an office building that the company pays money for. I'm here in a space, right? I don't live here. Thank God.
You don't?
No. My mattress is at home, about a half hour away. But it's just it's so cool to see that legal tech has started to bring along the lawyers, because like we're doing it right now, right? We're sort of like we're putting up the bar, like lawyers don't do this, lawyers don't do that. But
Yeah.
At a certain point, we started bringing them along for the ride with us, instead of saying, you know, don't get left behind. It was, why don't we show you how we're doing this? And it's been cool to see
Right.
over the last like decade or so.
Oh,
But I wanted to,
and I guess we shouldn't say that, like, I don't want to come off as like we're trashing attorneys, but like the thing is, like, attorneys have dragged their feet on technology for forever. And that is changing, like, especially with the younger attorneys. I see a lot, like, the age of attorneys is really up pretty high. Like, I can I can tell you, like, I'm 44. I'm not a young man necessarily. My children call me a boomer, but technically I'm middle-aged. But every legal event I go to, everybody's in their 60s and 70s. And like, that's not a crowd that's going to innovate. But the pandemic pushed a lot of those people out. A lot of those people are retiring. Now you got these 40, 50-year-old attorneys taking over firms, and they are much more willing to try stuff.
I don't think you are a boomer. I think boomer ended.
Boomer.
I think boomers are like 65.
I'm
66
definitely not a boomer. My kids are absolutely wrong about that.
Well,
but
it's the slang for boomers. So, when you do something like, I'm a boomer all the time. I got my flashlight on in my pocket with the cell phone. All the time. I catch myself all the time with that.
When you're 10, anybody over 16 is a boomer.
Yeah, 100%.
So.
The last time that we were together on my podcast,
yes,
we were encouraging lawyers to automate as many tasks as they possibly could.
we were. Yes.
I want to revisit that because, and I was just talking about this with Gabriella Cabero from Kpis right before this.
Gabriella's great.
I know she said the same thing about you. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I hope everybody listens to her. She's awesome.
What's like some of the most important, like low hanging fruit tasks that attorneys can automate? And then what are some of your favorite tasks that they can automate?
Oh, this is good. I like this. I guess the first thing I would say is, like, I like law firms to have like kind of an overarching strategy when it comes to this. So let me just lay that out quickly. 4 types of law firm workflows, as I see it. Intake, which we've talked about. What's the client journey? How does a potential client become an actual client of a law firm? Case workflows. You take each of your cases, you decide what the workflow is for that case type. Administrative workflows. So not necessarily stuff that happens in like that substantive area, but let's say you have an office and the toner runs out of the printer. Is like Keystone Cops to replace that? Or is there like a process in place for how to do that? Like, who do I order from? Who actually does the task? Like, when does it ship? That kind of thing. Like, lawyers overlook that constantly. And then for me, I also like law firms to have a closing workflow. So when is a lead a lost lead? And then what happens to it? When is the client finalized? Like, when is the case done? And then what do you do beyond just closing the file? Like, there's marketing opportunities there that a lot of people miss. So when we're talking about workflows, I'm looking at those 4. So what do you automate? I think there's 4 pretty easy ones. And my favorite is probably the first one. So I would say the 4 that I like the most are scheduling, follow-ups, e-payments, and e-signatures. So scheduling. So it takes an average of 8 emails for a consumer to schedule an appointment with a law firm.
Is that true?
That's crazy. Could you imagine sending 8 emails back and forth with like anyone in your life? It sounds tragic. And the consumer is going to be like, I'm on email number 6 and I still haven't gotten an appointment. And that's the average. That's a disaster.
Wow.
Like, it's so easy to get a scheduling tool like Calendly or Acuity, or maybe you've got another tool that has scheduling built into it. Like, if somebody lands on your intake page or your intake bot, whatever it is, you're in live chat and you've qualified them in some way, You just send them the link. You're like, schedule an appointment. And if you've done that effectively, you've qualified the person for the right staff person that they're going to talk to or the right attorney. So you're not like taking this additional step, which is like, oh man, like we got this client fire drill. Who are we going to send them to? We don't know. That should be determined like in the process. That should be part of the client journey. So that's an easy one to do. And that's the best one to do because, like, as I mentioned before, clients want engagement, but they also want to know what the next step is. And if you don't give them the next step, if you don't book them to an appointment, what they're going to do is call another law firm. So if you lose that appointment booking opportunity, you may lose the client forever. So make that as easy as possible. Like we talked about, this is like part of the convenience economy. Make it super easy for your legal consumers, for your clients too, to do anything. And then on the follow-up part, like what's cool about the technology that's out there now is that it's behaviorally sensitive. So these used to be dumb systems where it was like, okay, I'm gonna ask somebody to do something and I'm gonna send 3 follow-ups every 3 days until it's done. But the systems weren't able to tell, like, okay, because they weren't integrated, because they weren't cloud-based, I have now done this thing. So stop pestering me about it. Because last thing you want to do is have somebody do something and then send 2 follow-up messages. So with the way these are working now, you say, okay, schedule the appointment. Next thing I need to do is have you make a payment. I'm going to send 3 follow-ups to schedule an appointment. If they don't schedule an appointment, they're a lost lead. I move them to my lost lead process. But if they schedule that appointment the first time, the system's smart enough to understand, okay, the appointment has been scheduled. We're checking that off our list. Now, the next step is getting payment. Now we're going to send out the payment link. And you can automate all these processes individually or in conjunction with each other. Obviously, you want to do it as an automated workflow. And you can cut out most of the staff here, which is great. You're not going to fire your staff. You'll upskill them. But you don't have to have staff doing this anymore. So e-payments is another one. Lawyers who take e-payments, they get paid usually 90 days faster. They get paid about 30% more. I don't know what you need to hear beyond that to take e-payments. E-signatures, again, you're not going to have to come into an office. You're not going to have to sign anything, mail something. It's immediate, it's convenient. It gets to the next step of taking on the representation. So think about this whole process, right? Like, where is a human involved? There's probably 2 places. One is the conflict check, because I don't think the AI is where it needs to be to run conflict checks for attorneys. It's just not sophisticated enough. And I've had attorneys tell me like, hey, can you automate conflict checks for me? No, it's a bad idea. You want to run the conflict checks yourself. So an attorney comes in, they say, okay, this person passes muster. Let's set them up with an initial consultation. That initial consultation happens. The attorney is going to decide, hey, we want this client. We don't want this client. You don't want the client. You have the non-engagement process that they go down. You want the client, you have the engagement process. Literally, those are the only 2 things that need to happen that is human interaction in the entirety of the law firm intake process. And that's such a time saver, such a cost saver for law firms. But a lot of law firms are unwilling to adopt that because they think the human touch is still really important. Whereas really a lot of people find it to be obnoxious. Like, why do I need people to schedule an appointment with me? What do I want to do? I just want to talk to the attorney as quickly as I can. Like, getting them to the attorney as fast as you can, getting that attorney to make a decision, getting them to move forward. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's what people want. So you should be automating that whole intake flow. And anytime you can automate some combination of these things, I need a payment, let's automate that. I need you to sign something, let's automate that. I need you to schedule something. Let's automate all those things, and let's automate all the follow-ups for each of those things.
For anyone who's tuning in a little late, welcome to our law firm summer reboot camp. My name is Nick Werker. Today we're focusing on legal technology, and here with me is Jared Correia, the founder of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. And we're talking about automation right now. But I want to piggyback on.
But also Christmas music and
all that stuff. You got a Spotify playlist in the chat if you're interested.
If you're so inclined.
Should have made a themed Spotify playlist for this. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it tonight when I'm at home.
You should do it, man. Send it to me. I want to listen to it.
I'm gonna make a playlist that jazzes me up about legal tech, and I'm gonna follow you on Spotify too. So
we'll follow each other on Spotify. Excellent.
I wanna piggyback on what you're saying because it used to be, right? Like, I'm in marketing, so a lot of what I do is like word-based research on how people are looking for things.
Yeah.
and giving a name to certain things, right? Because I have to like, how does somebody understand who's never heard of like I have an answering service, right? How does somebody who's never heard of an answering service look up, how do I get yeah, let's can we put the 4 things? Joe or Tony, can you guys write the 4 things that needs to be automated scheduling, follow-up,
Oh yeah.
e-payments? Let's type it in. Can you type it, Joe? I think
I can type it in. I'm gonna type it in. Joe,
right.
Rest easy, my friend. I'm gonna type this in.
Jared, I love you, man. You're so fun.
I want to make your life easy. While I talk, you type.
Yeah. What the heck was I talking about? Oh, so I try to find names for things like how would an attorney go about finding like a solution to this problem that they have of answering the phone, right? How do I give a name to that? How do I educate my consumer base? But I also use that same thought process to sort of cater the experience that my customer wants to have with how I'm actually presenting it to them, right? So like when I go to sign up for a software or a service, or I go to buy a car, what are the things that bother me, right? That I would totally cut out of that sort of situation if I could. So if one of the things that, when you go to sign up with somebody that really bothers you is like, here's one thing that really drives me crazy that softwares insist on doing is having like the, are you the right fit for us call, where they just ask me a bunch of stuff that it's like a reverse cold call, and it drives me nuts. And
It's
don't want to
obnoxious.
have that. It's like a 15, and then they schedule the appointment. Why did I need to go through that? I already gave you all my information and told you what I'm looking for, and I've self-identified that I want your product.
Yeah. Right.
If I'm crazy in the consultation call with like the salesperson, hang up on me. I don't know what to tell you. I hate that.
That's awful. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
What I want to encourage everybody to do is automate the task, right? And find a way to automate the task that you yourself would find just drives you crazy. I want to talk about like stuff that all law firms should have, like if you don't have this, you're behind the game, right? So the last time I spoke to you, we were talking about the list of legal tech for a growing law firm. Let's get caught up, right? Because we want to make sure that we're going into the second half.
I'm good to do the tech list.
Hell yeah.
I guess so I think it's interesting that you're talking about that messaging piece of it, and then like tech companies who are like, should we even be working with you? Like it's such a shitty sales process. And like the other thing I hate about it is like if you're doing your job in terms of marketing and messaging to your client base, those people should be self-selecting in. And the people who call you should be a fit because you've set them up to be a fit because you've identified their problem and addressed your solution. So I have a big 4 of technology for lawyers. And because I like Joe, I don't want him to work very hard, I'm going to type this into the chat as I go.
I like Joe too.
Number 1, law practice management. Well, actually, let's do this differently. Number 1, productivity software. Productivity software. So you need email, you need calendar, you need document storage. Guess what? All that stuff is wrapped up in a productivity software. No fuss, no muss. It's super cheap. Like business standard edition of like Microsoft 365 with Microsoft's cloud-based productivity software. It's like $30 a month. Like easy peasy. That's a purchase you want to make yesterday if you don't have it already. Google Workspace, Google's version of a productivity software, same thing. Pretty simple and easy to use. Includes all those things as well. And at this point, like Google has reset their pricing, so they're very similar to Microsoft. And lawyers worry about document storage. You get basically a terabyte of data at the lowest tiered plan. And how much is that? People ask me. It's a hell of a lot of data. You're not going to run out of space as a law firm because you're saving text-based documents. It's not like you're saving audio files or video files. So that's number 1. And like the call I make here is like, if you're not using a cloud-based productivity software, that's the step up you need to make. You have to be in the cloud. Like it's just so much more convenient. I'll tell you, I don't think this happens too much anymore. But like I still get attorneys who are like, using desktop softwares. And they're like, oh, whenever I go home from the office, I have to forward all the emails to myself. I was talking to an attorney the other day and they were like huffing and puffing and sounded like they were going to have a heart attack. And I'm like, what's going on right now? Do you need to stop talking? And they were like, oh, it's all right. I'm just like taking my desktop out of my trunk. I'm like, to do what? And they were like transporting their desktop back and forth from the office. It was in the trunk of their car. So they're walking up like 3 flights of stairs with their desktop computer and connecting at the office. That's a true story. Innocent, to protect all the innocent, that I will not name any names. Number 2, law practice management software. So law practice management software is a relational database for your cases and clients. Essentially, like you've got the John Doe matter or file, you click on the John Doe matter, you see everything that's happened in that case. That's super important for law firms. Gabriella might have talked about that because she's with Kpis, which is a case management software acquired by my case, which was recently acquired by LawPay. See what I mean about all these acquisitions, like in the last 6 months. So basically, like that's something you can't do with email. And that's why you need that. Because with email, you can aggregate email messages, but you can't do anything about the documents other than putting them in folders. And then they're not affiliated with the emails in any way. You can't do time and billing in an email system. You can't run reporting out of an email system. You can't aggregate tasks and events so that they sit in a chronological order on a file. You can't do any of that stuff. Email is not a relational database except as it relates to email. So you have to have something else that does that for you that can integrate with these other softwares. That's law practice management software. Number 3 is accounting software. You're going to probably do time and billing in your case management software. You're going to keep track of expenses in all likelihood. You're going to manage e-payments. Hopefully, let's cross our fingers that people are doing that. Payment plans, evergreen retainers, that's all on the board. But you also want to push out that data into an accounting software where you can collect more financial data about your law firms. Like could be a budget, could be something that's useful for your CPA. So QuickBooks, Xero, they're good for that. And those all integrate with case management software. Again, get the cloud-based version. Xero is only in the cloud, but don't get like QuickBooks Desktop. And then the last one, which is the one I recently added, and I've talked about this in this program, which is CRM, customer relationship management software. So as I said before, like everybody was focused on back office client management. That's where law practice management software comes in. But then there's this whole other front office thing, which is how do you manage leads? What's your client journey like? Is there a pipeline in place about how these leads progress through that to become clients? Do you use that data to allow you to close and convert more clients? Do you have follow-up architectures in place? Do you automate all the things I was talking about before? A CRM is a great tool for that. And case management software, law practice management software just doesn't cut it because it's used as a client management tool. You need a lead management tool as well. And this is especially true for attorneys who, unlike a lot of other business owners like plumbers or chimney guys, like there are actually ethics rules in place for how attorneys deal with leads versus how they deal with clients. And you have to be very careful around how you work with leads. And there has to be a line of demarcation where that lead moves from a potential client to an actual client. And so I think using 2 softwares or a unified platform that has both those tools available is the best way to do it. So in terms of tech, I put this in the chat as well. Productivity software, law practice management software, accounting software, and CRM. So Anne Michelle said, can you drill down on the difference between LPM and CRM? I think I just did that, but let me know if that was not helpful and I can talk more. Or if you have a specific question, I'll answer that.
Barry, I don't want to say I'm ignoring you because I'm not. I was just providing a euphemism to like if I really was sort of rude to the person who was trying to sign me up for the service. But and Michelle, I think I understand what you're saying is that a legal practice management software kind of sounds like the same people and contacts would go into the legal practice management software, but that's where you do your work. That's where all your files go. That's where your follow-up with that person goes as it pertains to doing the work on their case. A CRM is sort of how the customer proceeds through their journey with your firm. So that's like they fill out an intake form on your website. They automatically get an email back saying, schedule a time with me, right? Then they get added to your schedule. On your calendar, you automatically give them a call for a consultation and you move them through the stages of the CRM in that way. until they get to the point where it's a signed retainer, they've paid you, you're doing the work. And then at the end, hopefully, if you have it set up right, it's review, referral, and all of those good things. So really the difference is—
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I thought that was excellent.
Oh, thanks, Jared.
And the other thing I'd say briefly on that is that in terms of like the intake stuff, like the automation part is the key there. And what you're focusing on there is direct communication with the clients. And when you get into the law practice management software, it's more about making sure the case proceeds while also still notifying the clients.
I think that's a really good point. And yeah, Barry, you're right. Don't hang up on anybody. I was just saying that the initial like reverse cold call was such a put off for me that that my solution was a poor one. You're right. I want to talk about getting caught up, but I also want to talk about modernizing your firm if you need to. Like, say you already have all of these things, but you want to get, I don't know, like ahead of the competition.
Next level, 2025, 2026.
Exactly, right? Let's get all the way there. When it comes to the way you operate on a day-to-day, is there anything you'd recommend lawyers do that you see that a good portion of most firms aren't already doing?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in data analytics at a very basic level. Folks have read the book Moneyball, I'm sure, or seen the movie.
Good movie.
With Brad Pitt, my doppelganger. The thesis there is that like if you can access data and actually review that data, think about that data, implement changes in your business model based on that data, you can outstrip your competitors who either are not capturing that data, don't have access to that data, or not utilizing the data to make business decisions. That's really the key component. Do you use data to make business decisions? And like, I'm a big baseball fan as well. I play fantasy baseball with my college friends still 20 years later, kicking their asses this year. So I'm happy about that. But like this whole notion of like finding a different skill set for a professional athlete and saying, instead of valuing like the traditional notions of what someone does on the field, we're going to value like OBP. So how often does someone get on base? That's valuable. And you see this in like the history of the sport, right? Like I'm in Boston, so I'm a Red Sox fan. I remember Wade Boggs in the 80s, and everybody was like, this guy's terrible. He's just like a slap hitter. He hits singles all the time. And like 20 years later, after that Moneyball revolution, people are like, but this guy was also on base all the time. And he was making it harder for opposing pitchers to concentrate. And that kind of shift in thinking wouldn't be possible without data. So what I tell attorneys to do is like, if you want to get ahead of your competition, stop making the ad hoc decisions that every attorney makes. I talk to attorneys about this in so many contexts. I'm like, what do you want to make in terms of revenue next year? And how are you going to make that revenue? They're like, I don't know. Revenue seems to come in. And they say, I need processes. I want to be more efficient. Well, how do you get more efficient? Like, what does more efficient mean? Do you have a baseline for your current efficiency? And of course they don't. So it's always just a feeling. And like, if you want to really do yourself a service, make more money, beat your competitors to the punch, the easiest thing you can do is start collecting data about your practice and viewing it in a format that's going to allow you to make decisions. So I'll give you a simple example, right? So on the efficiency side of things, let's talk about KPIs for a second. KPIs are key performance indicators. And the idea behind a KPI is that it is a number about your practice that allows you to determine whether or not you are achieving viable results in a certain category. So utilization rate is a KPI. So what utilization rate means is that for everybody in your office, in a given workday, let's say each staff person, each attorney is expected to work for a total of 8 hours a day. I know that's not true of most attorneys, but let's just go with it for simplicity. The question is, how much time do you actually bill in that 8-hour segment? Utilization rate is a measure of that. So if you bill 4 out of every 8 hours, that's a 50% utilization rate. Now, this is where the math becomes relatively easy, right? The higher percentage of your day that you can bill, guess what? The more money you're going to make. And the way that law firms make money, modern law firms, is they produce more widgets than their competitors. So how quickly can you move through these cases? Like traditionally, a lot of lawyers are out there doing the white tower thing where they're like, hey, I just want to work on interesting cases. But that means that you're going to be spending hours and hours learning about these cases. If you want to make money as a lawyer, and not everybody's out there trying to make as much money as possible, but let me frame this in a different way. If you want to make more money as a lawyer, what you do is you focus on certain types of cases. You figure out a workflow for those cases. You move through those cases as quickly as possible. And then here's the thing that most people miss. You measure how quickly people move through those case workflows. Wouldn't it be nice to know, if you've got 2 associate attorneys and you're considering making both of them partner, who works more efficiently? Or if you're considering giving somebody a raise. And then gamification comes into play here, right? If I've got 2 partners, Jane and Jill works really fast, Jane doesn't. This is not necessarily about getting rid of Jane. It's about, let's talk about this. Jill's really fast. How can you get fast like her? Let's look at some of the techniques she's using. But you can't even have that conversation unless you're capturing the data. So this is a challenge for some attorneys, right? To get to a utilization rate number, what you need to do is track every hour, every minute that somebody's working, and then compare that to the billable data. Now, a lot of softwares will run that calculation automatically. They'll also run like realization rate, they'll run collection rate. But in terms of like efficiency, utilization rate is maybe the most important metric that you can access as a law firm. And that's just one example. You can create your own metrics as well. And you don't have to be a math major to do this. I'll tell you, I have a personal injury firm that I worked with starting a couple years back, and they just had like a massive bottleneck in their firm. And we talked about it, and we looked at these different standard KPIs. And basically the problem was they weren't getting enough demand letters out. And so we set up a criteria in the firm, like, here's a KPI. Every week, no matter what you need to do, mountains you need to move, you get a demand letter out every week. And that's the simplest possible thing you could do in terms of a KPI. And this firm does a demand letter every week. And the first year we worked together, they made more money in the month of December than they made for the entire rest of the year, because they moved everything through the workflow. All those settlements came in. And so doing something potentially simple like that, that firm like tripled, quadrupled their revenue in 1 year. And it's just a matter of sticking with it. And this guy's great. Like sometimes they'll message me at like 9 p.m. on a Friday. And it's like, I just wanted to let you know I did my demand letter for this week. So awesome. The data analysis part of it is really important, not just collecting the data, but analyzing the data and making decisions based on that.
I love, so I'm not the biggest capitalist in the world. I'm also a big believer in like a lot of this stuff that we can do to be more efficient means the more time that we can take to ourselves to do whatever it is in our life.
Right, that's the other way to look at it.
Right. And if you are a big capitalist and your goal is to squeeze the lemon until you get all of the lemonade that your heart desires and then some, you can do that with the extra time too.
Yes, clearly I'm a greedy bastard. Thanks for bringing this back.
Hey, you self-identified on that one, man.
I did. That's on me.
I just like to point out that, like, all the stuff that you do that can save you time doesn't have to be spent getting more time to spend. Yeah. I think
that's a great way to look at it. And then lawyers also have like lifestyle practices they want to run from time to time.
Exactly.
Like they'll say, I want to work X number of hours. I want to take X number of vacations a year. I want to go to all my kids' games. I want to be the coach of all their sports. Like that's cool too. I want
to do pro bono work in this thing that I'm really passionate about, but you can't afford to do any pro bono work if you don't have any money. I promise. I wouldn't know how to do it. That's for a different seminar.
We'll do that later.
Yeah, we'll do that one. How to survive with no money. So for anybody who's enjoyed hearing from you today, which I assume will be everyone,
hopefully,
and they would like to follow up and connect with you further, how can they do so? What have you got?
I'll just pop my email into the chat. And then I'll pop in a couple websites, redcavelegal.com, which is my consulting website for business management consulting for attorneys. And then Gideon.legal is a software company that does intake, scheduling, document assembly in one package. So
Love it.
are we already done? Is that it?
Yeah.
Wow.
We are.